10 minutes. They may reserve 2 minutes as a rebuttal. We ask that the public keep their comments to 2 minutes unless they have previously requested in writing for 5 minutes as a representative of a group or organization. Pursuant to the provision of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that a final hearing before this commission is appealable to the Chancery Court of Davidson County or the Circuit Court of Davidson County. This a statutory writ of certiorari. You are advised to seek your own independent legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements are met. You should also seek independent legal advice regarding the applicability of the writ of certiorari to the specific decision of the Historic Zoning Commission. And next on our agenda is adoption of the minutes for February 15, 2023. Are there any questions? Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion and there's a second by Vice Chair. Robin, I think you got that from Commissioner Cotton. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Okay. That motion passes. Oh, no opposition. So the motion passes. Thank you. Any council members present today? Okay, seeing none, we do thank them for their contribution to our city as well. Presenting consent agenda.
Before that, if we could adopt the agenda.
Oh, and sorry, Robin.
No,
moving along through the agenda here.
We're going too fast on the slide.
Yes, ma'am.
So case number 7, which is 1001 Broadway, the notification requirements were not met. And to be truthful, it's probably going to be an administrative permit. It's a pretty simple project. Case number 14, 2710 Hawthorne, is a request to remove from the consent agenda. So if you agree to do that, we'll hear that at the end of the regular agenda. Number 19 is a request to defer 210 South 10th Street. Number 21 is 2809 Blakemore, and it's a request to move to the consent agenda. They agree with all the staff conditions. And number 27 is 1806 Ashwood, which is to remove from the agenda altogether, which is notification requirements not met.
Okay. Thank you for that presentation. Is everyone in agreement? We would like to have a motion this morning.
Motion to approve with changes.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a second by Commissioner Cashin. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. None opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, on the consent agenda today, first a notice to the public. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the public or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Items pulled from the consent agenda will be heard at the end of the agenda. To ensure an item is removed from consent for a public hearing, notify staff the day before the meeting prior to 10 a.m. when possible, or as we read through them, raise your hand if you would like something removed from consent. First, we have the administrative permits issued from last month. Then
when the case is called, so we'll know which one. When the case is called, okay, and then we'll know which one. Yes, please. Thank you.
First is 410 Broadway. It's signage. 1300 3rd Avenue North, alterations. 1226 6th Avenue North, alterations and a violation. 4405 Elkins Avenue, new construction of an addition. 910 Ackland Avenue, new construction of an addition with a setback determination. 707 Monroe Street, signage. 400 Broadway, signage. 415 Bushnell Street, new construction of an addition, partial demolition, and a setback determination. 2809 Blakemore Avenue, new construction of an addition with partial demolition.
We have a raised hand on that. Okay, 2809 Blakemore. So we have someone who's raised their hand, so that will be put at the end of the agenda.
Okay. Staff recommends approval of the other items on the consent agenda with the applicable conditions, finding the applications to meet the design guidelines for their respective overlays.
And just a agenda issue, 2809 Blakemore was case number 21, so we could keep that as case number 21.
Okay. Okay, so is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Vice Chair has made a motion and second by Commissioner Johnson. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes.
Next up is Haynes Manor, and Trevor Porter's going to present.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The Haynes Manor is a collection of about 16 streets located north of Mormon's Arm Road between Whites Creek Pike and Buena Vista Pike. It's significant in the areas of communication, of community planning and development, and ethnic heritage African American. Formally established as a subdivision in the mid-1960s, the Haynes Manor neighborhood is significant as a mid-20th century neighborhood developed for African Americans during the Jim Crow era. During this time, Black residents created their own communities within the context of redlining and other discriminatory practices that ensured physical separation between white and Black Nashvillians. Haynes Manor is located near Haynes Heights, which is one of the earliest of these subdivisions and a forerunner in suburban development in this area. Although developed in later years of this era, Haynes Manor also sought to provide a refuge for citizens displaced by urban renewal and interstate highway projects. Haynes Manor is recognizable for its noteworthy street names. Each street in Haynes Manor is named for a famous African American. Many of them are notable for their work in literary, performing, and fine arts, while others are accomplished in science or politics. The staff finds that the district meets criteria 1 and 2 of section 17.36.120 to be eligible as a neighborhood conservation zoning overlay. The district meets criterion 1 for its connection to the growing middle class of the Black community at the turn of the 20th century, and criterion 3 of its high integrity mid-century architecture. Staff recommends the adoption of the existing mid-century design guidelines to apply to the Haynes Manor NCZO, with the addition of Haynes Manor chapter include the short history and boundary map. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Robin, do we open public hearing on this? Okay. All right, we would like to open public hearing if anyone wants to speak on Haynes Manor overlay. Okay. Please come up and speak. Thank you. Please say your name and address, and we'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear support.
Thank you. My name is Claudia Humphrey Henry. I serve as the Haynes Manor Neighborhood Association president. We want to thank the commission for this consideration. We also want to thank Trevor for all of his diligent work and establishing all of the history. So we're very thankful for this opportunity.
Thank you as well. We appreciate your work as well in gathering information and collaborating with Trevor. Anyone else? Okay. Commissioners, do you have any comments?
It is always great to see communities come into the neighborhood overlay and receive that protection, especially so with this one, and heartily endorse it, and would move for approval of the recommendation.
Okay, Vice Chair has moved for a motion.
Second.
There's a second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Thank you again. Appreciate it. We're glad to have another possible, it goes to planning, it goes to council as well, doesn't it?
Yes, planning and council.
Yeah, planning and council. Very good. So that we're like the first review of it. Okay. All right. $37.09. Oh, right. I think I'm out of my sync today. 37. We're under the violations section of the agenda. I just want to give some clarification because this was sort of an unusual project for us. So this is 3709 Central Avenue. So last month, a public hearing, we closed public hearing last month, so there will be no presentation by staff or applicant. There will also be no public comment taken at this meeting. However, public comments were posted on SharePoint, so you're always welcome to look at that. And just so that our commissioners are clear on what our purview is today, is that per rule section 6G in paren 4 and paren E, you can direct your additional clarifying questions to staff. And during our deliberation, you can individually ask questions. So I believe that is our direction today. Do we ask if the applicant is here? Is the applicant here? Okay. All right, so we could direct the question to the applicant as well. But I think let's just be clear on that we should be really specific on our question, and so that the applicant can answer specific to our question and don't have a lot of, too much deliberation on that. Pretty clear? Okay, thank you. All right, any questions?
So, Kelly, I know last time we had a fair amount of discussion about what the height is and what it's measured from, and what the height is relative to the historic portion of the principal residence and to the addition of the principal residence. Can you, sort of clarify some of that? I never got quite clear on all that in my mind. So.
I could jump in if you don't mind, Kelly. I think to keep it super simple, there are no disagreements on what heights are at different locations. It's just what heights are used to make the determination. And recently we have been using the height of the historic building from the top of foundation to the ridge. And that's where the applicants disagree.
I'd just like to clarify, I was not at the last meeting, but I did review all the information in the packet, and I did view the deliberations over YouTube. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Kelly, I had a question. What is the height as built and what is the height that was permitted?
Just give me 1 moment to put the plans. As built, it is, I'm sorry. It's been a minute since I looked at these plans.
Yeah, no worries, sorry.
That building as permitted was approved at 21.6. And then, it was measuring at 24.5 from tallest point of grade when I visited the site.
Okay, thank you.
Kelly,
And then,
what the historic house, did you not ask that? What was the height of the historic house?
I did not.
Okay.
Yeah. For clarification, I just asked what was permitted and what the current height is.
As built.
As built.
Okay.
What Kelly said, because I couldn't quite catch it.
Yeah. Permitted 21.6, as built 24.5.
and I just want to clarify that those measurements are taken from the top of the ridge to the foundation, the beginning of the foundation, the top of the foundation.
For the outbuilding.
Pardon me?
The outbuilding is measured from grade, usually from the highest point of grade.
Okay,
And then the historic house is, in our opinion, is measured from the top of foundation.
okay.
Madam Chair, I would like to thank you extra 30 days because it's not easy to, digest this much paper on the meeting day. So, but extra 30 days really give us opportunity to compare apple to apple, orange to orange. So, what I was able to sort out is this is a violation, we call violation. Maybe applicant wanted to call it a mistake or miscommunication. But to me, it's very simple. What permitted on permit day of May 14th of 21. So that height is permitted at 22 feet and 6 inch. And what built was 24 and a half inch. So there's no discrepancy because of the permit, even though applicant confirmed or architect of the applicant confirmed it should have been built 22 and 11. So there's a little bit, inch or so difference, but generally 22 feet 6 inches to 22 feet 11 inches is the height should be permitted. And that's applicant agree. And for whatever the reason, it was built going into the builder. As built is now measure 24 and a half. So what we are asked is, what do we do about this violation? Because that's a violation. So we can say, oh, that's a mistake, I'm so sorry. Yeah, sure, you can leave it. But that's not how we always, deliver, because otherwise there's no meaning of having design guideline, or there's no meaning of having permit. That's why we call permit process, and during the process, sometimes design change, especially like this case. It passed 2 years. Like a permitted to construction study, nearly 2 years. So there will be some change and some modification. If that's happened, typically applicant comes to our staff and asks for variation or modification. And then typically staff is very good at understanding the situation. And if it's within the guideline, they can modify the permit and then reissue modified permit. So what did not happen in this case is after so many time has passed and plan has changed, applicant failed to submit actual modified to build drawings. So therefore, such a discrepancy. 2 feet discrepancy is huge. And everybody in this, historic zoning residents abide by those, zoning guidelines. So it won't be fair to just because those miscommunication or mistake had happened, just let it go. And yes, it's a big mistake, so we will forgive you. So that won't be fair to all other people who abide by the design guideline. So with that point of view, I think it's very simple, so they did not follow as permitted, and therefore mistake. So when mistakes happen, we ask to correct it. So in that point, I think I fully support staff recommendation.
Commissioner, may I jump in with just one clarification, just so that the record is clear? They did submit revised drawings. They included an email that said, we made some adjustments, but kept it within the setbacks and size limits. Thought I had copied you guys, and that's verbatim from their email. So we assumed that meant within the limits of the permit. We did not understand that they had the belief that there's a whole nother set of parameters that they could just be within.
Well, thank you for the clarification. Yes, the trace of the email, that's exactly same conclusion I got, because they have not asked the extra height. they are only asking for the setback variation. So when they resubmitted, my understanding is they have not asked extra height. So therefore, no matter which way I look at it, it is a violation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Robin as well.
But I respect what you say, and I hear that. But in looking at the documentation that was submitted, you know, the plans were submitted, and the full set of plans, and the staff said, I want to check to make sure it meets the guidelines. And then the plans were submitted, they were received, they were sent back and said, yes, I'll update, and it was approved. And then there was a site inspection that was approved as well. So I think the other issue is it's not about what it looks like versus the original set of plans that were submitted, because the revised plans were submitted. But the bigger question, I think, is that does it meet the guidelines? And so since there is discrepancy about the plans, do the revised plans meet the guidelines? At the last meeting, we talked a lot about whether the principal structure is the original historic structure or whether it's the addition, which is part of that principal structure. And looking through the definitions, I don't see any clarity as far as differentiation between the historic structure and the addition. They're both part of that principal structure from what I can see. And that's actually verified through emails on other projects by the architect. The architect was given specific direction once requesting the information from historic, and with different staff members, different time, different project, he was given the information that it is based on the principal structure, including the addition. So I think the real question to me is, do we fall within the guidelines? And to me, the bottom line for the guidelines is that it said the roof ridge height to the dado or outbuilding must be less than the principal building, shall not exceed 25 feet in height. To me, that's the big question. And although there are a lot of numbers, I don't see the difference between what the principal building and what that difference in height is.
May I add just two things? It was not improved at the inspection. Once we saw the framing, that's where she contacted them and let them know there was a problem. So I just want to make sure that's clear. And yes, the information that was given in 2018 is different than how we measure now. But I just wanted to add that.
So I guess, how is that communicated to the design professionals that we change the way that we measure it?
Through the permit that was issued. So it's not a design guideline, it's just a way of measuring. And I know that we've all had this discussion a lot, and there was a lot of concern over if it's the addition or it's an average of all four sides, then people start building taller additions to get a taller outbuilding. And so at that point, we all agreed that we would use this formula of measuring from the top of foundation. So that's what we've done most recently.
Madam Chair, I do understand Vice Chair's point. However, if you read a staff report very carefully, page 15 and page 17, they clearly, applicant even agree the historic house measurement, front and alley side. And front side is 22 feet and 3/4. And applicant measure back side is, which is addition, is 23 feet and 10.5 feet. So with that measurement, as built, 24.5 inch is greater than historic house of the backside. So with applicants, architects, their own measurement. And also page 16, an applicant measure how it should be built. And applicant agreed the blueprint should have been built 22 feet and 11 inches. That's the outbuilding's height, applicant's own architect measurement. So to me, therefore, applicant agreed to build on that, but when it's come to build, somehow it nearly 2 feet taller than it's supposed to be built. So I think up to then, everybody agreed based on the permit. and even permit was issued, and even permit was have to modified because of the setback determination. There was no resubmission about the height difference. There was no permit to build exceeding historic house. So that's really troubles me.
Commissioner Cashin, so as your other architect, do you have comments on the drawings?
It's a difficult situation, but in a nutshell. It's a difficult situation, but in a nutshell, I tend to agree with Commissioner Johnson.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing that I would have to add here is if we have them rebuild, typically we've been going longer than the 60 days because of the time that it's taken to get workers and during this period of time. So I would suggest that we move that from 60 to 90 days if we disapprove the addition.
Vice Chair, you have other comments?
I hate situations like this where both the applicant and the architect and the contractor all make attempts to, communicate, and the communication winds up, somewhere going awry.
Yeah.
So it's hard for staff. It's hard for everybody involved with this. So, yeah.
I don't want to say that it's simple, and I hear the opinions, and with Commissioner Johnson, what we look at when we get these violations is simply, and it's not simple, but as a matter of that, we look at the permit. Did the applicant follow the permit? If they didn't follow the permit, then they're in violation. So in that sense, it's clear. I know the way communications might be in between all that that happens, it's life. But I think as a commission, what we need to decide on now is, was the permit followed or wasn't it? And we can see how this vote goes, because we are a commission that makes, your opinions according to how you understand it. So, I would motivate you all to make a motion, and let's see how this pans out. Okay?
So one other clarifying question, and you mentioned that I looked at the drawings that you were talking about, and the red lines, I'm assuming, says that the measurements of the applicant's architect, I guess, or contractor. And so there it says that the house itself is 23 feet 10 and a half, and that the data is 22 feet 11. So that makes it, in essence, a foot shorter than the house itself. So wouldn't that still fall within the guidelines, even though it's somewhat different than the original application?
I think that was the intent, and that was permitted. But as built is unfortunately 24 feet and 5 inches.
So Robin, were those measurements, those red measurements of the drawings or measurements of what was built?
Our measurements of the drawings and our measurements of the building, no matter how you look at it, to us appear to be 2 feet taller than what was permitted. But you were right that new drawings were submitted. The height wasn't called out.
Okay, I'll throw out a motion here and see what happens. With respect to 3709 Central Avenue, I make a motion that we adopt the staff recommendations to disapprove the outbuilding as built, and that we give the property owners 90 days instead of 60 days to correct the issue.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a second. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All, who's opposed?
I'll abstain.
You'll abstain. We have an abstain. And legal, is there any, you have any comment on that?
No, I mean, generally you do have a duty to vote, however unpleasant it might be.
You know, the reason I was abstaining was because I hear conflicting information, and it's hard to tell, you know, all people with good intentions whether, you know, where the fault is. But, you know, given if in fact it was built 2 feet taller than permitted, then I will vote aye.
Okay, so can we I want to restate that vote if that's okay, because just to be sure we've got everybody on the same page.
You'd like us to retake the tally of the vote?
Yes. So there was a motion by Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor of that motion, raise your hand. Okay. So that was in opposition, 0. So the motion passes. Okay. Just because this is public hearing, because the applicant is here as well, and to give that consideration, is that we do, you know, you've heard our deliberations for the past 2 meetings. And so as a commission, we really try hard to understand these things. And, you know, we're not perfect, but what comes before us is what we can almost see clearly. So, but thank you, commissioners, for really digging into it, and we will do our best. So thank you, applicant. Okay. I think we're clear on that, and I think we're going to move to the next.
On the measurement,
The
31.6 is not the right height.
Yeah, applicant, thank.
Because it's incorrect in the staff recommendation. But it does impact how we make the change.
Okay.
So my first presentation today is with 913 South Douglas. This is a circa 1931 bungalow. An admin permit was issued for an addition of this property in April of 2022. During an inspection of the site, staff found that windows had been installed in the addition without prior approval, and that 2 window openings in the foundation had been altered without approval. The windows in question are made of vinyl and have interior muttons or grids. So the 2 windows in question, the 2 altered windows, are at the basement level on the left elevation. They were enlarged in size without staff review or approval. In this case, staff finds that the alteration could meet the design guidelines given the location and being at or beyond the midpoint of the home. So again, the windows that we are concerned about or Plygen Cementon. These are vinyl windows that previously not been approved by staff. In the past, vinyl has not been considered compatible material for windows due to their high gloss that's typically associated with the material and its inability to be sanded and painted like wood windows, and the details such as weep holes in the welded corners. These windows in particular have prominent weep holes and fusion welded corners that are not typically seen in historic windows and seen in previously approved placement windows. These windows also have interior grids or interior muttons. The guidelines specifically state that muttons should be fully simulated and bonded to the glass and exhibit an interior bar, exterior bar, as well as a spacer between the glass. So interior grids have typically not been approved for windows. So in this case, staff recommends approval of the partial demolition of the window openings in the basement of the historic home and disapproval of the basement replacement windows and the windows in the addition, finding that they do not meet Section 4 of the guidelines for materials and that they should be removed and replaced with windows that meet design guidelines within 90 days of the commission's decision. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Kelly. Not at the moment. Applicant?
Hello, I'm Jared Metzler. I'm the general contractor on the project. And basically there was a series of emails at the beginning. This is in May, May 8th, May 9th, May 10th, when we were looking to replace the windows in the existing house. So we went through the process of, I, of course, provided the plans and then also provided pictures of what the windows would look like. And basically, at the end of the email exchange, the statement was that that we do not need to review the windows because they are replacement for the windows in the existing house. Well, I guess my interpretation of that, because I submitted a full set of plans, including the addition and everything, that all the windows that we did in the house would therefore be accepted. We did add an additional 300 or so square feet to the house itself, and that addition has 2 windows in it, which were a part of the original window package. So those are the windows that are now being brought into question. We just ask that we can keep those as vinyl windows to match the now existing 20-something windows that are in the house itself. So that's the request.
Thank you. Any questions to the applicant? Okay. All right. Open public hearing. Close public hearing.
So, Madam Chair, I will start. This is another very complicated one. I mean, we don't like to deal with a violation, and hopefully everybody, follow the guideline, and, it should not have be miscommunication, but it happens, so it seems like that's where we are. But what troubles me, this one is, seems like if, in this district, the resident want to have replacement windows, the staff does not review. So therefore, these vinyl windows are not recommended material, but the resident want to replace existing one to vinyl window. It's not on the list, but it's allowed. So it seems like it triggered because they did addition and basement. But hypothetically, if this applicant follow the historic guideline and then have appropriate windows, and then time passed, and then they decided to replace the window, and that windows happen to be these vinyl windows, we are okay with it. So it kind of does not make any sense to me. So in that case, yes, indeed, it is a violation, but is this something we can overlook? So I'm kind of contemplating, so I'd be, happy to hear other commissioners' opinion on that point.
Can I add a little bit of clarification to that? There's a difference between replacement windows and new construction. You do review windows for new construction. You do review windows if the window is changing in dimensions or location, which is the case for the basement windows. So that's why they came into play. The replacement windows on the existing house that are the same size, no, in the conservation, you don't have the ability to review that. But you do review all the materials for new construction.
Let's make it more difficult. Just kidding.
So all the windows are vinyl, and that's fine, except for these 2 which are vinyl but aren't fine because they happen to be reviewable. So you would have incompatible window types in the same house. Okay.
Just to add to that, and Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not just two windows,
Okay.
right? It's the windows of the
sorry.
addition.
So it's 2 in the rear on the addition and then 2 on the foundation where the windows have been altered in size. Those ones will also have to be reviewed.
Okay. Thanks.
But what I heard you say though earlier was that the sizes are not an issue. Is that correct? So the dimensions of the windows are appropriate?
Yeah, so the sizes are fine, but the windows aren't.
Right.
Because the window wasn't relocated, there was no change to the window size.
Yeah, it's changed the window size, but they weren't relocated.
Oh, okay.
So basically, the problem is the material of the windows.
And therefore, if we follow the staff recommendation, they have to change 4 windows. They will have 4 windows of one material and all the rest of the windows will be of another material. Okay.
Correct. Kelly? Okay. You are correct, Commissioner.
Which is common. This is what you've been doing for decades. I just wanted to add that.
Madam Chairman, with respect to this particular project, and with all due respect for decades and decades of prior precedent, I think that on this particular project, because the windows are appropriate size, they match the rest of the windows in the house, and we are talking about 4 windows in a non-prominent location, that I move that we follow staff recommendation for approval of the partial demolition of the window openings on the basement of the historic building, but also approve the windows that have been installed.
There's a motion.
Second.
There's a second. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. All right. Thank you, Commissioners.
She's trying to take my turn. Come on. So the second violation they talked about today is 1426 Gartland. The main house itself is a circa 1920 bungalow that contributes to the district, but the violation is regards to the outbuilding. The outbuilding has 4 total windows. It had 4 windows, 3 of which were not approved by staff. The 3 windows in question are Silverline Series 300 windows. They are on the side of the building facing the neighbor's property. These windows are also vinyl. We talked about why vinyl is typically not approved for windows in the previous report. So these ones, while they don't have interior grills, they do have the weep holes as well as a fusion of other corners that staff typically does not like. So with this project, like the previous, staff recommends disapproval of the windows installed at 1426 Gartland Avenue, finding that they do not meet Section 4 of the guidelines for materials, and that they be removed and replaced with windows that meet the design guidelines within 90 days of the Commission's decision. Any questions?
We might. Thank you, Kelly.
No, the applicant is here.
Hello, councilors. Thank you for your time today. I have some photos to pass around to look at while we talk. My name is Clayton Lanehart. I'm the owner of Bevel. We're a design build firm here in Nashville. We do mostly additions, renovations. We do quite a bit in the historic overlay. I think that both Melissa's on staff can vouch for us that we typically try and stay ahead of all violations and don't like to be here because of them. I wanted to talk about a couple of things today. The first couple were just that on this particular project, while there was an oversight on these windows, we did do a couple of things to go above and beyond what the guidelines call for in order to make sure that the home did follow the historic appearance of the house. So what you're going to see in front of you is some photos. One is of the existing home, a side elevation, as well as a picture of our porch on the rear of the structure, as well as how the windows are currently trimmed. So what we did was we found a relatively inexpensive way to match on all of our soffits on both the outbuilding and the addition we're doing on this home to match the open soffit where you can see the roof planks. So we did that on both the addition and the outbuilding, even though it's not required by the guidelines to stay within guideline. Also, the window that Kelly had shown before was of the windows that are in violation, but they actually got trimmed incorrectly. So you'll see a photo of how the windows are currently trimmed on the house, which we trimmed them to match the existing home. So again, something a little above and beyond the guidelines. And then thirdly, I include some details of how we plan on trimming out the 3 porches that are on this home. So we are going to follow the corbels and column caps and all the proportions of the existing home to make sure all those porch details match. These are all in the rear of the structure, not visible from the street or the alley, but they're all, or sorry, not from the street, they are visible from the alley. But we did go above and beyond here to try and make sure we were there. So in the particular case of the windows that are in question here, there was an oversight. Budget has been a concern on this problem the whole time. We had 4 leftover windows from a past project that we offered to Miss Ballou, the homeowner, as a way to help with the budget on this project. And in doing so, we failed to bring that to the staff's attention. So we understand that is something that we should have done and we did not catch in our process. However, the reason why we chose these 4 windows, there's actually 3 of them on the outbuilding, and there is a 4th on the addition that Kelly brought up. And those 4 windows were chosen because from the interior of the home, they cannot be seen next to any other windows in the house. So we knew that if these windows were slightly different than the others, it wouldn't be noticeable. On the exterior of the home, the window that's on the addition in question is not visible from the street or the alley. And while the very top of the window is visible from the neighbor's property, the bottom of the window where these weep holes are is not. And that's due to a 6-foot-high fence that runs all the way around the property that really blocks the view of these windows, in our opinion, from the surrounding properties. Also on the outbuilding, same kind of thing. You can see the tops of these windows, but you cannot see the bottom where the weep holes are. In addition to all this, the window package that was approved for the addition and the outbuilding was a Ply-Gem 1500 series, which is a white vinyl window and looks very similar, in our opinion, to the Silverline windows that are in question here, with the main difference being the fact that the Silverline window does have the weep holes on the bottom, but the profile and the color and the sheen of these windows is nearly identical to the Ply-Gem, which was approved in our permit. So what I've come here today to ask for is if an outright exception to the guidelines is not something that the staff can find accommodating here, that we at least determine some way that we could potentially retrim out our windows so we hide the weep holes, but still allow us to keep those windows and not go through the expense and the added time of having to change them out. Both of our addition and our outbuilding have full rain screens behind the siding, so it would be relatively easy for me to draw up a detail similar to the porch details you have that would accommodate a trim detail that would hide the bottom of the window but keep the proportion. So I would offer that I could draw up a detail and submit it back to staff for approval that would allow us to keep these windows in place without having to replace them. We really do try and go above and beyond to, again, preserve the historic nature of the homes and make sure that our additions and our outbuildings look like the original buildings, as well as add some degree of performance and efficiency to those buildings while we're building them. That's why, again, we have the rain screen behind these additions. We try and use energy efficient windows where we can. So anyways, that's why I bring this up to you today. Thank you for your time and your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions to the applicant at the moment? Okay. You have a few minutes if there's any rebuttal. Open public hearing. Close public hearing.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question to the staff?
Sure.
So the way I read is because this major concern is a weep hole of the window. That would be the biggest issue, other than it's not one of the approved kind.
And the vinyl material. And Kelly, were there other features on this window?
And it was the welded corners as well, the way that's welded together in the corners.
Kelly, could you just speak just a little louder? Thank you.
It's also the corners. They can't tell them that well in this photo, but they have these welded corners that's very visible when you actually look at them.
You can see it well on your monitors, just not on this screen.
So I see. So the weep hole and corner, would that be something staff could accept by modifying what applicant was proposing? Or would that be way beyond acceptance?
And we're not the decision makers. You are, of course. But we don't find that it meets the requirements that have been established in the past.
I need a clarification. I think I may have heard, did I hear Mr. Langhart say that there were vinyl windows approved initially, and these were just a different brand of vinyl windows?
I'll have to confirm, but there are 1 or 2 vinyl windows on our list that have been approved.
Okay.
I don't know the context for why they were approved, but I know they're there.
There are some, just the fact that they are vinyl would not automatically kick it out. There are some vinyl windows that are on your list that are approved.
There are 1 or 2.
1 or 2 manufacturers, and this is a different manufacturer. Okay.
We've been looking at a collection of factors, the material, how it's pieced together, weep holes, how close is it to an historic window is what we've been looking at.
I appreciate the fact that the contractor really did seem to go above and beyond and try to work with the owner to meet some, budgetary problems. I appreciate the fact that he also offered to try to submit a detail to work with you all, to work with staff to find something amenable. I haven't come to a decision yet, but I just want to put that out there.
It is, always hard of the violation, but because of the location of the building, and because it's outbuilding, not totally visible from the street, and because of same type of vinyl but different brand was previously approved. So I am heavily leaning towards overlooking this violation against staff recommendation.
I think I drove by this property and, it's obvious the window in the back you can see from the alley, but the ones on the sides I couldn't really see that well. So I agree with you. And it's quite a whimsical neighborhood. I just wanted to let you know that neighborhood is adorable. And so, but I'm leaning towards Commissioner Johnson in allowing these windows.
Could we put a stipulation on there that the contractor work with staff to come up with a detail that is agreeable?
It can be made with a motion. We have other comments. Yes.
I so move that we.
You are making a motion?
I am making a motion.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to have a comment?
Okay.
Please jump ahead. Okay. Yep. In terms of 1426 Gartland Avenue, I recommend that we do allow these windows with the contractor coming and working with staff to approve reasonable detail.
Okay. There is a second by Commissioner Johnson. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none? Okay, thank you. That motion passes. These things come up and when permits are issued, this is a general thing. This is public comments, I mean, public hearing. We really want the contractors to look at the permits and to look at the guidelines. And, you know, mistakes can happen, but I think if you really, and we're all moving very fast, especially in this day and time of construction, but the encouragement is for contractors to really look and see what your permits are saying. And if you're under an overlay, please be sure and talk to the staff. They're going to walk you through it. So I just want to say that as a general comment, because we're going to get more violations and we don't want to see those. And we do want to work with the public as close as we can. So help us help you. So thank you.
Okay, next up is 1911 Wildwood, which is a circa 1943 minimal traditional house that contributes to the historic character of the Belmont-Hillsborough neighborhood conservation zoning overlay. This house, there's no increase to footprint. What they are proposing is a dormer off the rear of the roof. The dormer is not inset 2 feet per the design guidelines. So the design guidelines states that dormers on rears should be inset 2 feet from the sidewall. The guidelines do allow for the dormer to stack on the rear wall, but on the side walls, the guidelines state that it should be inset 2 feet, and the applicant is proposing 1 foot. One of the reasons why the guidelines ask for 2 feet and the commission typically asks for 2 feet is that because it distinguishes between the new and old construction and ensures that the dormer does not disturb either the front or the side facades. In addition, it helps to keep the new construction subordinate to the historic construction. Furthermore, if the dormer were to be removed in the future, the 2 foot inset ensures that enough of the roof plane remains that the original roof form could remain intact and be restored. So there are these are the elevations. Here is the roof plan and the second floor plan showing the 1 foot inset. And so staff is recommending approval with our standard conditions and with the condition that the dormer be inset 2 feet rather than the 1 foot. And the applicant I'm happy to answer any questions, but the applicant's here if you have questions.
Thank you, Melissa. Not at the moment again.
Just say your name and your address, and then you can advance that area. Yeah, that's the forward area. It's just
okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Guy Cristiano. I'm the homeowner here at 1911 Wildwood. Thank you to the commission and to Metro Historical for your time today. We're planning this rear dormer addition to the second story. Our architect has recommended that a 1 foot inset of the dormer to gable wall of the existing house makes the critical difference in achieving the size needed for livability of the space in order to accommodate an appropriately sized bedroom area given the small size of the house. This addition would not add to the current footprint as stated, but merely expand up and utilize the existing floor plan while having minimal impact, if any, to public street view, while still respecting and preserving the historic integrity of the home. We believe this addition naturally complements the features of the other similar homes to honor the architectural heritage of the neighborhood. This home is part of a cluster of small homes built in the early 40s on Wildwood, Hawthorne Avenue, and parts of Cedar Lane, built in a minimal traditional style as mentioned, notable for their small, compact, overall size relative to other homes in the Belmont-Hillsborough neighborhood. A common and practical addition seen in the expansion to the second story with a rear dormer. Because all of these homes are of a small footprint, measuring typically on average about 29 feet, the dormers also appear to commonly expand near the full length of the existing house, and therefore were built typically with only a 1 foot or less inset from the side gable to maximize the space of the addition, while still creating visual harmony with a dividing line between roof and dormer addition. I do have, the slide here shows what that addition would look like with the 1 foot inset And just to point out, the dividing line with the roof line separates the main structure from the addition so that the focal point is on the house. Just for comparison's sake, this would be the different views with a 1 foot versus a 2 foot. Here's an example of another home in close proximity where a 1 foot inset was built as an addition to accommodate 2 bedrooms and a bathroom above. And so our belief is that the architects and builders at the time felt this was the appropriate size given the limitations of the size of the original home. This is the street view of said home, pointing out that the addition in the rear is very subtle and not very visible from the street. Here's another view of that same house. Here's another home also on Wildwood where a rear addition was built. And again, to point out, the dividing line of the roof brings focal attention to the main home. The dormer almost blends into the background of the property. Here's another example of a rear dormer that was added to a similar property. And then the street view of that property, this house is actually 2 houses down from the proposed property, just to illustrate that the dormer addition is of low visibility to the street view, and so would have minimal impact on traffic, public traffic. And just a few other examples. This is from Hawthorne, cross street with Wildwood, and again, just to illustrate that this type of build was historically very common to this neighborhood. And another example here. Another example in Cedar Lane, also in close vicinity. And this is an aerial view of the neighborhood and highlighting all the various homes that did have rear dormer additions built. And so this just illustrates the historical context for this type of addition unique to this neighborhood. A few other examples. I did want to point out on this particular home, there is no differentiation between the dormer and the roof. So in this example, the dormer is clearly more present from the view from the street. And then an example of a ridge raise where the ridge raise is again more present to the street view. In contrast to our plan, which does not include a ridge raise and would therefore have less visibility from the street. So I did want to also make note in the Metro Historical Zone Commission Belmont Hillsborough Neighborhood Zoning Overlay document, the portion on ridge raises does say the raised portion must sit in 2 feet from the side wall. The section on dormer additions states rear dormers should be inset from the side walls. And furthermore, in the definitions section of that document, it does actually define the word should. So normally that would be an issue of semantics, but in this case, it does say what must happen unless circumstances illustrate why an alternative is more appropriate. So we feel that based on the circumstances of this property being a small home, less than 30 feet wide, the house is set back far from street view, and the addition is modest, that this would be a circumstance where a 1 foot inset would be appropriate. And so just in summary, to recap, the house is small and narrower than typical of homes in the area at 29 feet length. We are staying within the footprint of the existing structure. The dormer would be set in 1 foot to account for the smaller length. Going in 2 feet would make the bedrooms significantly small enough to the point of causing an issue with livability. We do feel an exception can be made in this case due to the limitations of the footprints. Allowing this 1 foot inset would have minimal visual impact from the street view. And since there still is an inset, the dividing line still brings focus to the main structure. And by eschewing the raised roof ridge, the addition is even more muted from the street view and blends into the background. And so size of the dormer in inset distance is typical of additions on houses in the immediate vicinity, including direct adjacent neighboring homes, therefore maintaining the existing rhythm of the neighborhood and honoring the historic integrity of the home. And these houses together create a sense of harmony and continuity for the neighborhood, and this addition would be in concert with that effect. And so as the document for the historical zoning overlay mentions as well, I'll just quote that, the design should create an aesthetic appearance which complements the historic buildings or other structures. So to conclude, we feel this particular feature of a 1 foot inset rear dormer has become part of the natural fabric of the historic neighborhood through the years, and our plan follows the established pattern and rhythm of existing buildings of its immediate surroundings. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you, Mr. Applicant. We appreciate your explanations. Open public hearing. Close public hearing. Another interesting.
Madam Chair, I love applicant prepare and with a slide and comparison, and especially nearby neighborhood. So applicant knows what's happening in the neighborhood. And I think applicant was very persuasive, and especially considering, this house, it looks like, one of the smallest house in the vicinity. And so try to keep the house existing footprint, and considering the addition is in the rear facing and very minimum visibility. So I am quite persuaded by the applicant.
Thank you. Any comments? It's rare that we approve anything beyond that 2 foot. I don't know what we've done in the past, but consistently we
cannot recall a single case. I've been here about 12 years. I cannot recall a single case where that's been allowed.
Right.
So if that is the direction you had, we would just appreciate some guidance on when it's okay and when it's not okay. So we're giving consistent guidance.
True. And so one clarifying question is, perhaps I misunderstood. All the picture applicant brought up, it looks like really closer to the wall. So, but those are literally 2 feet inset?
We don't have any permits for any of those images, so they must have been done prior to the overlay.
So it must be the build prior to overlay. Okay.
We do hear we appreciate the comparisons, because it is the rhythm of the neighborhood. But again, prior to the overlays, those, now we're here today, and again, it's rare that we've ever approved anything. I'm not persuading you in that way, but just to be sure we're not setting ourselves up for a future applicant that comes in and says, well, you approve that because the vicinity is this. So I just want to caution you when you make a decision, if it's not within the recommendation, is that we need to be really clear on why we have decided that.
I respect Commissioner Johnson's opinion. However, I beg to disagree. I think the guidelines are pretty clear, and I think we need to adhere to them.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Is someone ready to make a motion or more discussion? Give it a try.
I move that in the case of 1911 Wildwood Avenue, that we confirm staff's opinion, staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All in favor of the motion? Okay. All hands have been raised, none opposed, so that motion passes. Okay, thank you. Again, applicant, thank you for your explanation, and appreciate you continuing to work on that. Good luck, and thank you for a reasonable size on that addition as well.
All right. The next request is for 2809 Blakemore Avenue. This is a request for a rear addition to the historic house, and the request also includes partial demolition. The proposed addition is located at the rear of the historic house and meets all setbacks. The new construction includes a ridge raise, which can be appropriate here since the house is not a true cross gable form. As proposed, the addition slightly more than doubles the footprint of the existing house, but staff finds that it can be appropriate in this case since a good portion of the footprint of the addition is single story and or just a covered porch. And also because the addition reads as 1.5 stories, which is an appropriate scale for this house. So staff finds that the proposed rear addition can meet the design guidelines. As proposed, the project includes various partial demolition, including roofing, porch posts, adding a door to the left side of this attached garage, which is original to the building, adding a window to the left side gable, which staff finds can be appropriate considering it is located at the midpoint of the house. Let's see. The applicants also requested to reconstruct the attached garage to convert it to a habitable space, which staff finds can be appropriate in this case since historic garages like this were not that well constructed and definitely don't meet modern needs. Removal of the stone wall to the right of the house is also proposed, and staff finds this can be appropriate. This feature is not included on any Sanborn maps, and it's not a typical feature you would see on a house of this style. The applicant had also requested to remove the brick from the house and reinstall it to add some insulation. There are more detailed photos in your staff recommendation, but the applicant has agreed with the staff recommendation to not continue this work considering the condition of the existing brick. And in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the project with the conditions set forth in the report. The applicant has agreed to them all. I was able to touch base with the neighbor who came by, and I believe we've addressed her concerns as well. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah. Okay. Open public hearing. Oh, applicant. Sorry. I skipped there. Since we thought you approved it. You were in agreement with all the recommendations. But you're welcome to speak, of course.
Thank you so much. My name is Betsy Luttrell, architect and general contractor for the project. And I guess I raised my hand before I found out the neighbor. It feels a little more comfortable, but I just wanted to say that we are a pretty straightforward project where we're stepping in 2 feet, going up 2 feet via ridge raise. And we just really feel like everything we're doing is respecting the existing structure. So I just wanted to kind of come and introduce the project, but it sounds like I may be able to curtail my presentation a bit because we may be looking at smooth sailing. I maybe save the rest of my time in case that changes.
We are always happy when the applicant is in approval of an agreement, so with staff recommendation, and it makes our decision-making easier, so thank you. Applicant has spoken, so we are now open public hearing. Closed public hearing. Commissioners, I think we're straightforward on this. If somebody could make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the staff recommendations for 2809 Blakemore Avenue.
Thank you. Motion. There's a second by Commissioner Johnson. All in favor of the motion? Okay. Seeing none opposed, that motion passes. Thank you. Thank you again, applicant.
Okay, next we have 1324 Stratford Avenue. This house contributes to the Inglewood Place Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The application is for an addition to an existing outbuilding, which was approved by the commission in 2016. So here's the outbuilding. The applicant would like to fully enclose this front porch and extend that side gable by 12 feet. With the proposed additions, the square footage will exceed the 1,000 square foot maximum by approximately 60 square feet. Here you can see the site plan. That side setback was approved by the commission at 3 feet in 2016. The proposed porch enclosure is along the side. Staff finds this could be appropriate, as enclosing that porch doesn't increase the amount of footprint that's encroaching on that 5-foot side setback, and as the 3-foot setback was approved previously by the commission. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of the proposed outbuilding addition with the following conditions: material approvals by staff, and the footprint shall be reduced to be no more than 1,000 square feet. With these conditions, we find that it meets the guidelines. I believe the applicant is here. Would like to speak. Would you like to come up? Oh, you're in agreement? Okay, she's in agreement. So,
yes. Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, applicant. So we're open public hearing. Closed public hearing. All right. I think we can also vote straightforward on this one.
I will make the motion that we accept staff recommendations for 1324 Stratford Avenue.
Motion. Second by Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor? Aye. Seeing none opposed, and that motion passes. Thank you.
The next case is 1207 Fatherland Street. And the applicant proposes new infill at 1207 Fatherland. The house previously located at 1207 Fatherland Street was a circa 1910 cross-gable Victorian cottage located in the Laughlin Springs East End Neighborhood Conservation Zoning Overlay. The property included a non-historic outbuilding. The MHZC approved demolition of both the house and outbuilding in September of 2022, and the structures have since been demolished. The applicant now requests new infill on the vacant lot. The immediate historic context is largely one-story houses with a few modest 1 1/2-story houses. There's a strong presence of contributing houses on this block of Fatherland. The proposed infill meets all base zoning setbacks. The proposed side setbacks and width of the house combined continue the rhythm of spacing for this block face. The proposed infill has a 1 1/2-story form with a ridge height, eave height, and width that are all compatible with the historic context. Staff finds that the proposed infill meets the design guidelines for materials, form, roof form, dormers, orientation, siding and building type, setbacks, parking and vehicular storage, and proportion and rhythm of openings. Staff recommends approval of the project with the conditions shown on the screen. These are all standard conditions. The only one that's a little bit different is number 3, just that a walkway be added to the site plan. And with these conditions, staff finds the project meets the design guidelines. I'm happy to take questions, and the applicant's here as well if you have any for him.
Thank you, Joseph.
Thanks.
Applicant?
Hi there, I'm Cheyenne Smith. I'm the designer of record, and thank you, Joseph, and the rest of the staff for looking at all the iterations, the many. We're in agreement with everything, so no additional comment.
Awesome, thank you. I think we met you at
for the demolition
last year. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Open public hearing. Closed public hearing. Okay. Another one.
Sure.
Madam, oh, okay.
No, you go.
Madam Chair, with respect to 1207 Philolen, I recommend that we adopt the staff recommendations.
Thank you. Got both of those? Right, Robin? I think you heard both of them. Okay. There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, next up is 1402 Franklin Avenue. This is an application to enclose a side porch at 1402 Franklin Avenue. The house sits at the corner of Franklin and 14th Street and does face onto 14th. Staff finds that the proposed porch enclosure largely meets the guidelines. The one issue is the proposed use of lap siding on the porch enclosure. Historically, such small sections of wall were not covered in lap siding. Staff finds that a flat, smooth material such as fiber cement panel would be more appropriate. That's what was used on this other example on the bottom right there. That one's in Englewood. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of the proposed porch enclosure with the following conditions. The proposed lap siding shall be replaced with a flat, smooth material such as stucco or fiber cement, and the other materials should be reviewed and approved by staff. The applicant had a baby on Friday, so she's not here today, but I think she did send someone. Yes, there's someone here to speak on her behalf.
Okay, thank you, Jenny.
Hello, I'm Mason Hart, general contractor on the project, here to present on behalf of the homeowner. We thank commissioners for their time and staff for being so helpful through this whole process. Like is stated in this recommendation, we're in agreement with everything. The only thing that we would like to see change from the recommendation is the use of lap siding on this porch enclosure. Our reason for that is fairly simple. There is an existing addition, which you can see in the top picture here. That addition has lap siding. So our whole, only thing we're requesting is to match that existing addition. So that is pretty much everything we have to say there. There is another addition that is currently under construction at 900 14th Street, which is across the street, directly across the street from this project. And it has used the same lap siding that we're proposing on their addition. They do, I will give them, they have less windows and there is a little more space between the windows and the corners, but it is the same type of siding that we're trying to mimic there. So that's it, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Open public hearing and close public hearing. Jenny, can you direct us again about cladding?
Sure, it's kind of hard to see here, but I think it's probably more clear on your screen. Around their windows and those just very small pieces of wall, they want to use a lap siding. We just felt like that didn't really create the appearance of an enclosed porch. It looks more like solid wall. And we're looking for something that reads as a porch that's been enclosed. So we're recommending something smooth like stucco or fiber cement board. That's what we've seen people use in the past, and we felt was successful. But they're just asking to be able to use that lap siding there.
Which the lap siding is an approved.
Lap in general is an approved material, correct? Yes.
And you're just specifically talking about the vestibule?
Yes. In this location, we found something smooth would be more appropriate.
All right. Does that explain a little better? Okay. You might have a question later. Vice Chair?
I have to agree with staff recommendations on this, although it's a little bit hard to see from the rendering here and the elevation. I do think that the solid material would be more appropriate around this area.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else?
With that being said, I respect my Commissioner Stewart very much and his opinions here. And so I would make a motion that we adopt staff recommendations, unless nobody else has anything to say, for 1402 Franklin Avenue.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there a second? Second. There's a second. I think I'm going to toss the coin, and it's going to be Commissioner Johnson that made the second. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes.
This case is 814 Boscobel Street. The application is to construct a 750 square foot, one-story outbuilding in the rear yard. The house at 814 Boscobel is a craftsman-style bungalow that was constructed in 1920. The property is located in the Edgefield Historic Preservation District. The proposed outbuilding is located at the rear of the lot behind the primary structure, which meets the design guidelines. The outbuilding meets all base zoning setbacks. Staff finds the proposed outbuilding meets all of the design guidelines for height, scale, massing, form, setbacks, and location. Two material options have been proposed for the primary cladding of the outbuilding that staff finds do not meet the design guidelines. The applicant proposes pre-finished metal cladding for the primary outbuilding cladding material. The applicant has submitted two different options to staff for the pre-finished metal cladding material: a wave fixed metal panel, and that's shown in the top two images on the screen, and then a T-reveal metal panel that's shown in the bottom two images on the screen. Staff finds that both of the proposed options are metal options that mimic materials that are specifically called out in the design guidelines as inappropriate and therefore do not meet the design guidelines. Staff finds the proposed wave fixed metal panel to be a metal panel that mimics vinyl or aluminum siding, and staff finds the T-reveal metal panel to be a metal panel that mimics T111 in appearance. While an appropriate metal cladding product for an outbuilding in this overlay may exist, staff finds that metal cladding that mimics materials that do not meet the design guidelines to be inappropriate. Staff recommends approval of the proposed outbuilding with these two conditions: that MHZC review and approve all material selections, and that a primary cladding material is selected that does not mimic materials that do not meet the design guidelines. And with these two conditions, staff finds that the project meets the design guidelines.
Thank you, Joseph.
I'm happy to take questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Okay, sure. Applicant?
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Kennedy. I live at 3700 Brush Hill Road. We're the architect for the project. Just thank Joseph for work on this. So we initially, so we're just essentially down to the skin of the building of what the, to the approval. We initially submitted a corrugated Corten steel, like a wave Corten steel product that we've used in Edgefield District recently. It has an exposed fastener system. Our client, sort of after some consideration of that, said, you know, I'd really like to get a concealed fastener system. So his sort of launch point, I guess, in this project is, and sort of guiding principle of ours as well, is, you know, following sort of the interior standards, which is building buildings of their place and time. And we felt like the cladding could contribute to that. The other principle essentially of he's looking to build a building with as little maintenance as possible. So using high quality finished products, the exposed fastener somewhat doesn't fall into that category. So we started proposing pre-finished metal products. Some have 40-year finished warranties. So we submitted the wave panel. I've got samples here if it's helpful. You know, and I think honestly, like most of our, sure, they're a little sharp, so kind of be careful with the edges. As much as anything, we wanted to have a dialogue amongst, you know, commission for us for guidance, and also maybe staff and kind of future products. I know certain products, you know, go through commission review and then become something that can be used. But I would say we didn't agree with the idea that the wave metal looks like vinyl siding. I think the relationship of those things is probably the opposite. I think low quality materials try to mimic high quality materials, not the other way around. But I also think there's a shade and shadow quality of the wave panel that you don't get with cheap, vinyl siding or even what we think of aluminum siding. You probably get maybe more of an homage to a channel siding or something like that. I mean, we're not trying to honestly mimic any material. We're trying to propose materials that are, of today's time. The second material is was submitted sort of the second iteration is a reveal panel, and what what we're proposing, the manufacturer didn't have samples of. They make that panel with the reveal in varying widths. So they make a 1/4-inch reveal, a 1-inch reveal, a 2-inch reveal, 3-inch reveal. So, and regardless of 1/4-inch or 1/4-inch reveal or 2-inch reveal, this is the dimension that can vary. They basically can shorten this flat piece in order to make that reveal wider. I don't see reminiscence of T111. I mean, I think we all know what T111 is, but I mean, this would have, significant shade and shadow. It really would look more like a board on board, or, like a board and batten with a wide board look, as opposed to T111, I guess, in our opinion. And I think board on board would be approved in the district. This comes pre-finished, again, back to high quality and maintenance products. So I think as much as anything, we're just wanting to have sort of some dialogue about materials. Where does mimicry leave? I mean, every product looks like something, I guess, if you sort of stand far enough away from it. But just have some questions on that and just open for any discussion.
Not at the moment. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Open public hearing and close public hearing.
Madam Chairman and the applicant, the materials that are proposed are appropriate materials in a lot of situations and, good quality materials for a lot of applications. However, I think we really are tied to the guidelines that say the materials, texture, details, and material color of a new building's public facades shall be visually compatible by not contrasting greatly with surrounding historic buildings. And so I think that pretty well tells us that, although we may have sympathies and yes, in the future something may change, these guidelines that were adopted by the neighbors themselves really dictate that we use materials that are historic in nature, that blend in with the historic fabric of the neighborhood. So based on that, I recommend approval of this project with the conditions in the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is there a motion and a second? Second, Commissioner Johnson, seconded. All right, all in favor? Okay. I hear and see none opposed, so that motion passes. Also, just a comment that it is Edgefield Historic Preservation Zoning Overlay. So, at times we like to see stricter guidelines. Neighborhoods conservation overlays, we tend to have a little bit more leniency, but when you're under historic overlay, specifically, and I think it's Edgefield that, holds true. So just as a general comment.
All right. Next one is 0 Manila Avenue. This is an application to construct infill on a vacant lot on Manila Avenue. The subject property is unique. It's irregularly shaped with over 200 feet of frontage on Manila. It has varying lot depth and challenging topography. As proposed, the infill will be oriented toward Manila Avenue, and the infill will meet all setbacks. So the infill is 1 story at the front with height and width that are appropriate for the context and given the challenges of this particular lot. As proposed, the primary cladding of infill is shake siding, which the commission has approved previously as an accent material on infill, but has not approved as a primary cladding material. When reviewing this, staff found that while a modern material for a contemporary building can be appropriate, The use of a historic material in a different way than it would have seen traditionally may not be appropriate for infill. So for this reason, staff would recommend that a different primary cladding material be used in this case. So here are the proposed side elevations and the rear. And here are photos showing the non-contributing houses to the right on the photo on the top. The bottom photo shows the historic house, the look away on the left, and then on the right, the two-story, which is more recent infill. So in conclusion, staff recommends approval of the project with the conditions set forth in the staff recommendation, including the condition that the shake siding not be used as primary cladding material.
Thank you, Melissa. Are you the applicant?
Only if you call me out.
Okay. Well, you were walking down to the podium, so are you the applicant? Okay. Would you like to speak?
Sure.
You have been waiting.
I'd like to thank the commission today for hearing us and staff for working for us through the project. One thing.
Can you give us your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm Richard McCoy. I'm with Bootstrap Architecture.
Great. Thank you.
I'm the architect on this project. This is a little bit of semantics, but one of the things I wanted to clarify, and I think I went back with Melissa on this on some email, the use of the word material and the use of the word product gets a little constrained in there because you all talk about a modern material, which is cement fiberboard, but then say that it's a historic material in the next sentence. So it's not a historic, it's a historic shape of a modern material. So it's cladding in that way. And that's what I just wanted to clarify that how we were moving forward with that. Because I think what we're trying to attempt to do is use obviously modern materials that have some level of detail and texture to them. As of right now, I think what we're seeing is there's not a lot of texture and material in modern materials, but it's coming. I think cement fiberboard is probably going to kind of reach out and do some different things that'll probably go beyond our traditional shapes and forms. So what we were trying to attempt to do here is basically create a traditional form. It mimics a lot of what you all saw. There were some images. There's a lot of post-war housing there, built 50s, probably 70, 80 years ago, right along that area. And then there's obviously some new additions that are much larger in scale than those traditional forms. And what we were trying to do was kind of mimic those forms, relate and contextually scale with the neighborhood and do kind of a simple little cottage shape, but then add some details to it that create some interest in it and make it of 2023. Things detailing like the window sizes, porch configuration, and obviously was the texture of the massing and cladding material that we're putting on the house. While I would say that it's correct to say that shakes are probably not used in most of our conservation overlays as a primary cladding material, they have been traditionally used as a primary cladding material in other regions of the country. It's not a primary cladding material. Cape Cod would probably argue with that wholeheartedly. So what basically what we're proposing is that we feel like we've met this, as staff has noted, tried to meet the scale and representation of the neighborhood, but then have a little, create almost something for the owners that's kind of a fun little cottage in the woods. This sits on almost an acre of lot. It sits 140 feet back from the public street right-of-way frontage to the front of the house, to the first part of the house that you can actually see. So it's not unlike even a dadu sitting on the back of a property, where I think we have been a little more lenient with use of materials in some instances. So that's all I got. I'll hang around.
Thank you. Thank you. Open public hearing and close public hearing. Commissioners?
Madam Chairman, think this is a great solution for this property. It's a modest home, and I think that it's a well done, meeting the scale of this neighborhood, which is a small scale neighborhood. And I wish we were in New England and I could endorse the shingles, but given that this is Middle Tennessee, I think I have to agree with staff recommendations. So with respect to 0 Manila Avenue, the way I love the address, I have to move for approval based on staff recommendations and conditions.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Second? Second by Commissioner Cashin. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Thank you, applicant.
Sorry. Moving on to 2710 Hawthorne. Sorry. A little tickle. This was one of the projects that was removed from the consent agenda at the request of the applicant. So 2710 Hawthorne is a circa 1941 minimal traditional house that contributes to the historic character of the Belmont-Hillsborough neighborhood. The application is for an addition and an outbuilding on a corner lot. Most of the addition and the outbuilding staff finds meets the design guidelines and recommends approval of, so I'm just going to focus on the one issue. The applicant is proposing on the main level to have a pop-out bay at the rear, and that bay is only 18 feet from the garage versus 20 feet, which is what the commission, which is what the design guidelines calls for. So the design guidelines calls for 20 feet in between the two structures. Because of that pop-out bay, at a point, it's only 18 feet. So, and again, here are the side elevations. So this is the only issue that staff has with the project. Everything else we find meets the design guidelines, is the distance between the two structures with that bay. And here is the rear facade showing the bay. There is quite a bit of slope to the lot, you can see, so the garage is sitting at a much lower level than the addition. So staff is recommending approval of the addition and outbuilding with the following conditions. The last two are standard conditions, and the first one is that all parts of the addition, including any projecting bays, be at least 20 feet from the proposed outbuilding. And I believe the applicants are here and would like to speak, but I'm happy to answer any questions before they do.
Thank you, Melissa. Applicant, thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Beth. Glenn Oxford Architecture, 2934 Sidco Drive. Thanks, Cyril and Beth, for committing to these commission meetings. We go back a long way. We don't know each other, but we see each other at AI conventions. So, and that one drawing right there, you can see the 18 feet from the bay area. If you extend that over to where we have our 2-foot setback for the second level of the dadu, we are 20 feet. I know that's kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit, but that's one way we met that 20-foot requirement. And the client really wants the bay window. That is her main reading area for her bedroom. So with that, ask for your approval, and thank you.
Thank you again. Open public hearing and close public hearing, right? Discussion?
Well, I just want to say that his proposal sounds reasonable to me, that it is 20 feet from the upper level. It's just my first impression.
Did you have a question, Commissioner? I'm sorry, a comment. Mm-hmm. The 20 foot's, 18 foot is only from the bump out, you want to call that. So the 20, there is a good 20 foot from the actual structure to structure. On the bottom, it says 18. Could you show us the slide where it just actually shows the it's the elevation, so she can see the, oh, that one. That's the rear facade. That's the one, right?
This is the rear facade. And then these are the two side elevations of both the addition and the garage.
But that shows the 18-foot section.
Yeah, so that was a measure of 18 feet. That's 18 feet from the wall of the bay to the main wall of the house.
But that other elevation was the actual bay, is what I'm trying to just show.
This elevation,
there. Yeah, Commissioner Mayhall, that's it, section right there.
You can see the arrow. You can see the arrow.
There we go. Thank you.
Here's the bay.
Any comments?
The way I see it, the ground level meets 20-foot setback. To me, it's like a 2 feet aerial encroachment. And so that's what the bay window is. I don't think there's no harm allowing extra 2 feet on that aerial encroachment, considering we did occasionally allow less than 20 feet setback between back of the house to outbuilding based on, different configuration. So I am in support of applicant's request to allow bay window in that location.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair, did you have a comment?
I can't tell what the percentage would be, but it looks like that bay window is less than a fifth of that elevation. And so I do see it as a primary elevation. So I have to agree with Commissioner Mayhall and Commissioner Johnson on this one.
Okay. All right. Is someone ready to make a motion? And staff, do we need to make an additional comment on why we are approving this specifically? Or
I think it's been outlined really well.
okay, very good. Just want to make sure we're following have a good lead.
So, Madam Chairman, with respect to 2710 Hawthorne, I move for approval with staff recommendations with the exception of item 1, and that 20 feet be measured from the primary surface rather than from the bay window.
Second.
Okay, motion, a second by Commissioner Mayhall. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. Okay, thank you. Okay, Robin, is there anything else?
That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, staff. Thank you, those who've waited in the public there. And commissioners, thank you for your time as well. See you next month. We are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.